Imagine you are in a classroom. The teacher stands at the front. Students sit quietly. There are rules about attendance, grading, discipline, and even how you should speak. Now ask yourself, who has power here? Most people would answer the teacher, the principal, or perhaps the government that runs the education system. But one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century would say, you are asking the wrong question. According to Michel Foucault, power is not a weapon held solely by dictators or governments. It is a net we are all caught in. Power is not merely held by a few people at the top. It flows through society. It operates through language. It shapes what we think.
It defines what counts as truth. And most importantly, it influences us even when nobody is forcing us.
Today, we will explore three of Foucault's most revolutionary ideas: power, knowledge, and discourse. By the end of this lecture, you may never look at schools, hospitals, prisons, media, or even social media in the same way again. Michel Foucault was a French philosopher, historian, and cultural theorist born in 1926. He became one of the central figures of post-structuralism and postmodern thought. His major works include Madness and Civilization, The Birth of the Clinic, Discipline and Punish, and The History of Sexuality. Unlike traditional philosophers who asked, what is truth? Foucault asked, how does something become accepted as truth? That small shift changed the course of modern theory. Before Foucault, power was generally imagined as something simple. Power belonged to kings, governments, armies, police, and religious authorities. Power appeared as physical force. Someone ordered, others obeyed. The model looked like this. Power leads to command, which leads to obedience.
For centuries, this seemed obvious. But Foucault argued that this understanding is incomplete. One of his most famous claims is that power is not something people possess.
Instead, power is a network of relationships. Think of power as electricity moving through wires. You cannot point to a single location and say, there is all the power. It moves, it circulates.
It exists in countless everyday interactions. Teachers and students, doctors and patients, parents and children, managers and employees, judges and criminals.
Power is productive, not just repressive. Most people think power only stops people from doing things. Power says don't steal, don't shout, don't break rules. This is repressive power.
But Foucault argued that power does much more. Power actually creates reality.
It creates categories, it creates identities, and it creates knowledge. For example, schools do not merely teach students. Schools help create the category called the good student. Hospitals do not merely treat illness. They help define what counts as normal and abnormal. Power does not merely prohibit. Power produces. This was his truly revolutionary insight.
Knowledge and power, why they cannot be separated. One of Foucault's most famous concepts is power knowledge. Notice the slash. Foucault deliberately joined the two words together because they are entirely inseparable. Knowledge produces power. Power produces knowledge. Each reinforces the other. Example, medicine.
Imagine a doctor diagnosing a patient. The doctor possesses specialized knowledge, and that knowledge gives them authority. The doctor's words carry immense weight, and the patient trusts the diagnosis. Knowledge becomes power. But at the same time, institutions such as universities determine what counts as medical knowledge. They determine which diseases are recognized and which treatments are deemed legitimate. Power creates knowledge, and knowledge creates power. The relationship works in both directions. Who decides what is true? This question fascinated Foucault. Most people assume truth is simply out there, waiting to be discovered. Foucault countered that societies create what he called regimes of truth. A regime of truth is an institutional system that determines what can be said. It determines who has the authority to speak. It determines which statements are accepted and which ideas are rejected. Every society has institutions that produce and sustain its truth, such as universities, scientific organizations, courts, governments, and media networks.
These institutions shape what we accept as objective reality. Now we arrive at one of Foucault's most important ideas: discourse.
The word sounds intimidatingly academic, but the core idea is straightforward. A discourse is a system of language, institutions, and social practices that shapes how we understand the world.
It is the set of unwritten, historical rules
that dictate what makes sense and what is considered madness in a given era.
Discourse determines what can be discussed, how it can be discussed, who is allowed to speak on it, and what counts as legitimate sanity or truth. In short, discourse creates reality as we know it. Consider mental illness. Today, our medical discourse uses terms like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and psychological disorders. But people in the Middle Ages spoke an entirely different language. Some believed mental disturbance was a sign of demonic possession, divine punishment, or witchcraft. The physical phenomenon may have been the same, but the discourse changed. The language changed, the explanations changed, and the institutions changed. As the discourse shifted, society's understanding of reality shifted with it.
Think about crime. A criminal is not merely someone who breaks a law. Modern societies classify people through psychological tests, legal categories, prison records, and expert analysis. These systems create a heavy discourse about criminality. People become categorized as juvenile offenders, habitual criminals, or high-risk individuals. Language creates the categories shape the identity, and the identity influences how society treats them. This is discourse in action. In his famous book Discipline and Punish, Foucault explores the history of human punishment. Centuries ago, punishments were public spectacles. People gathered in town squares to watch executions. Punishment directly targeted the physical body. The king displayed his absolute power dramatically and violently. But modern societies changed. Punishment became less visible. Instead of public torture, societies developed highly organized institutions: schools, prisons, factories, hospitals, and military barracks. These institutions discipline individuals by regulating their time. They regulate space and movements. Power became subtle, invisible, and continuous.
To explain how modern power works, Foucault borrowed an architectural design proposed by the philosopher Jeremy Bentham, the Panopticon.
Imagine a circular prison with a lone guard tower standing at the center. The cells face inward, backlit by windows, so the guard can see every move the prisoners make. However, the windows of the tower are heavily veiled. The prisoners can never see inside the tower. Because they can never see the guard, they can never know exactly when they are being watched. Therefore, they must assume they are being watched every single second. That is the genius of the system. The guard does not need to watch constantly. The uncertainty of the gaze forces the prisoners to monitor and regulate their own behavior. They internalize the eyes of the guard. Foucault argued that modern society resembles a giant, invisible panopticon. Think about CCTV cameras, workplace evaluations, internet tracking, and algorithmic monitoring. We don't need a police officer standing over our shoulder to make us follow the rules. We regulate our own behavior because we know we are always potentially visible. Power works through self-discipline. The ultimate form of social control occurs when people become their own prison guards. If you are studying literature, you might wonder, why do we care so much about a French historian of prisons and madness? Because literature is deeply connected to discourse. When literary critics use Foucault to read a text, they ask, who has the authority to speak in this era? Which voices are silenced or pushed to the margins? How does language construct the characters' identities? How do the institutions in the story shape what is considered normal? A Foucauldian reading examines how a novel or poem participates in the broader systems of power and knowledge of its time. This connects text and power. Let's look at Charlotte Bronte's masterpiece, Jane Eyre. A traditional reading might focus on Jane's romantic journey or her inner strength. But a Foucauldian critic looks at the institutions of discipline. Think of Lowood School, where Jane is sent as a child. Lowood uses freezing rooms, sparse food, strict schedules, and religious shaming to control the girls. Foucault called this the creation of docile bodies, training individuals through routine until they perfectly conform to society's expectations. The school's purpose is to break Jane's fiery spirit and discipline her mind and body into becoming a proper, submissive Victorian woman. The focus shifts from individual romance to a broader look at how social institutions actively manufacture who Jane is allowed to be. Foucault became a cornerstone of postmodern thought. Alongside thinkers like Jacques Derrida and Jean-François Lyotard, He challenged the idea of universal, timeless truths.
He argued that knowledge is historically constructed. Truth is produced within specific social systems to serve specific networks of power.
This single insight entirely transformed literary criticism, sociology, history, cultural studies, gender studies, and media theory. Of course, not everyone agrees with his outlook. The three most common critiques are power everywhere, human agency, solutions. He makes power seem too all-encompassing. If power exists everywhere and in everything, is genuine resistance even possible? He neglects human agency. Do individual choices and free will have enough weight in his model, or are we just puppets of our institutions? He diagnoses problems without offering solutions. Despite these debates, his influence is impossible to deny. Let us return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Where is power? For Foucault, power is not tucked away safely in governments, laws, or palaces. It is woven into the fabric of everyday life in our schools, our hospitals, our language, and our technology.
Foucault's lasting lesson is profound. The most effective power is not the power that forces us to obey. It is the power that quietly shapes what we believe, what we know, and even who we think we are. Once you begin to see those invisible networks of power, you can never look at society in quite the same way again.
If you enjoyed this lecture, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep explorations into literary theory, criticism, philosophy, poetry, and world literature. Until next time, keep reading critically and thinking deeply. Thank you for watching.